Okay, guys, UFC 252 has ended, and unfortunately, the fans are left with this feeling of, right? I don't know. Raul, what do you think, man?
I think so. I think mostly for that co-main event, that Omalley fight definitely was not what no one expected. I'm pretty sure a lot of people lost a lot of money and are not happy. But with the main event, I think not as much. We got a solid fight. Yes, there's going to be controversies. But no, it definitely was not a usual card, one would say.
Oh no, I mean, so you have the DC legend trilogy heavyweights. This is the chance for the UFC, like you said last episode, for the UFC to kind of bring back the tradition of heavyweights in fighting, because like you said, they're not very prominent. I mean, yes, we have heavyweights that are great and all that, but it's not the most anticipated fight of the year. The heavyweights collide, and it ain't like that anymore. It's more like, big cool story with two heavyweights. But this was as close as it got to that, and I was so sad to see it go down the way it did. And of course, we're gonna touch up on a little bit on the Sean Omalley incident, because you can't miss that. The Sean Omalley incident was perhaps more upsetting, I would say. And maybe we can start there, actually. I think we could end with the DC thing. What do you think, man? I think we should just jump straight into Sean Omalley.
I mean, for sure. I mean, first and foremost, Twitter was live last night. If anything, what made this card interesting is what was happening behind the scenes as the fights were happening. So for anyone's listening, as low as it gets, follow me on Twitter. I live tweet the fights all the time, and I'm always retweeting what's being blown out there. And you can really see the magic that broils behind the scenes with the fight. With the Omalley, I remember tweeting, a lot of people were even doing the same, where I was just saying like, oh yeah, this isn't even the main event. But everyone was so ready for this fight and super hyped about it. But again, because of the outcome, a little anticlimactic and disappointing. And it sparked a really huge debate with Vera's reaction to it. Some people are calling him a sore winner. Other people are saying there's the whole debate between what was the real injury to Omalley. Was it the leg kick? Was it the trip? So maybe I should probably take it backwards a little for those who didn't see the fight. So Omalley starts a fight with his, trademark striking. Vera wasn't getting hurt, but you can kind of see Omalley had the advantage there with everything, speed and distance. And then there's this moment where all of a sudden Omalley just does this weird stumble, and from then on his leg straightens out, stiffens up, and you can just see something happen to his leg.
Ah, gross.
Yeah, so he gets taken down or trips again. And then there's the other part of this fight, which was what some might say a little early of a stoppage, with only about 20 seconds left in the round. So it ends with a technical TKO. That's the end of the fight. But a lot of questions in this fight. And
we got to start with the elephant in the room. I think the most, like, if I had to pick one thing that everyone wants to know, that if they want, like, that if they come to this show to watch, would be, okay, so the sore winner, that's going to be the first thing. So let's assume that scenario one, Sean Omalley didn't get hurt by anything that Chito did to him, right? Which is what it seemed like. I don't know. I don't think a leg kick would cause that kind of reaction. I mean, really, I don't know. But I will say this: Chito was definitely being a sore loser, if I have to take a stance, because
sore winner.
Sorry, yeah, you're right. Sore winner. To me, Vera was being a sore winner, and I'll tell you why. He did not earn that win, and I think this is something that, again, the controversy is real, and I get it. But let's look at the facts here. You have a guy who was losing the fight. I'm sorry. We got what we expected from Sean Omalley. He came out looking clean, landing body kicks that Vera didn't see coming. He was landing little strike steps. He was piecing him, guys. I mean, let's just be real here. He was getting pieced up. I mean, you feel free to disagree with me, but I felt like Omalley had an opening minute that was amazing, and Vera seemed like it was only going to be a matter of time before he ended up the way Eddie Wineland did, or at least into a decision where he got clocked and rocked. And so that being said, he buckles, he falls, and then you get on top, you land a few punches, the fight's over, and then you look at the camera and you go, "You doubted me. You guys doubted me." It's like, yeah, and we still kind of do. We still do. Like, I'm not saying you're not a good fighter, but I'm saying, like, you haven't shown us you can beat Sean Omalley.
Yep. Yeah, and I think that's where the confusion's at, that anyone who's on the side of Vera not really earning this win, they're assuming like, oh, you think Vera's a bad fighter. That's not the argument. In fact, Omalley himself knows Vera was dangerous. And the fight did not go long enough to make any determination of who was the better fighter. It's just that, okay, for those 3.5-ish minutes that we did see solid fighting on a scoring scale, we had to decide, Omalley was winning that round just on his striking and control of the octagon and pace. But the problem is, if we were to show and prove that, in fact, Omalley legs kick or Vera's leg kick to Omalley was the one that caused the injury, then yes, that's a fight. You couldn't take Vera's kick. That's beating someone. That's beating a fighter. But we saw the slow-mo. We saw the awkward trip where O'Malley's feet do a really weird angle and all his weight goes on it. So he obviously it was self-inflicted. So that's why I think Vera didn't actually beat Omalley. So to come off that victory and talk the smack you're talking, it's the Vera show, and give me a top 10 guy next and all that stuff. I was like, no, man, like if anything, you're gonna have to sit down now and get the rematch ASAP.
But let's think about this, right? Because also from Vera's perspective, and you said this last episode as well, it's like, well, Vera is a guy who is trying to be the baddest. He's king of the jungle, right? He's trying to be the baddest dude out here. And a test like Sean O'Malley would have been everything he needs. It's everything he needs, right? A test. So he gets there. The scene is big. He's expected to lose dramatically to this guy. Everybody has him as an underdog, and he comes out the winner. So, of course, he's going to – what other opportunity will he ever have to talk smack after beating a big name? Now, we say beating, but I understand. All right? That's what I think it all boils down to. When else – MMA specifically is a sport where if you're, for example, Conor McGregor, the reason he had an amazing era was because he clocked in on like a good streak of 4 or 5 fights that are absolutely amazing. He talked all the smack he could. He got everyone's attention. He got everyone to tune into his fights. Then he got his ass beat by the real ones. Not that he wasn't a real one, but you know what I mean? Like the real tests. Like, okay, you're an MMA fighter here. Fight a guy like Khabib. Nope, couldn't pass the test. Failed miserably. And what happens now? He fucked off. He's gone.
Right, but with your point on the lucky streak, because that's true. A lot of careers are made on just guys who got the perfect fights at the perfect time, landed the perfect shots, and it just so happens that was all they needed. I mean, you can see that with Derek Lewis. Derek Lewis, you would never say athletic-wise he's one of the best fighters. He's had luck. Not luck, okay, I don't want to take that away. I'm just saying things have worked out. All the pieces have fell perfectly. But with this, but with all those fighters who have done that, there's been no questions with their victories. There's been no doubts.
I see, and I agree.
When Conor had his streak, he clearly and definitely dominated all those fights. And so then you can even exclude the leg injury from this fight. And then you got the stoppage issue. So I had a stumble on Twitter over this, where I tweeted right away. I'm like, I feel with 20 seconds left, there was a little bit early of a stoppage. And then I put, Herb Dean is slacking. And by this, I mean, because of just prior things that have been happening with every event, it seems like Herb Dean is always involved with some controversy. It happened with Dan Hardy recently. You know what I'm saying? So and then people start, replying and saying, like Herb Dean knew about the leg and that's why he had to stop it. I didn't want to get into arguments, but I pretty much said, okay, you know what? I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. And I would like to hope that that's why Herb Dean did it. If that's the real case, then Herb Dean did his job. He protected the fighter. He knew the leg was injured, and he knew O'Malley wasn't going to do anything about it. But I just don't see that as a possibility. How would he know? Not even people watching the fights live, the commentators knew what was happening. All they knew was like, yeah, O'Malley seems like something's wrong with his leg. But he was still fighting. The ground and pound wasn't detrimental. And again, you got 20 seconds in the round. You have to play it out and give the fighters a new round.
It's true.
Such an early stoppage, I thought.
And the commentators said it. The commentators were like, oh, if O'Malley makes it out of this, we'll have to see. And it was 30 seconds when the commentators started making, they started making comments on the fact that, hey, the round's about to end. And then we see, and it's like, damn, we never got to see a second round.
And in terms of record, imagine how much different it would have seen if it was, okay, even if it was a doctor stoppage, but at least that looks a lot better than TKO when it really wasn't a TKO. It was just.
Well, for Vera, it looks much better that he can show the highlight reel and say, well, here's a couple of elbows I threw. And by the way, let's remove all elements from this fight leading up to that elbow. That was a sick elbow, though. Like that elbow was just, that ground and pound was just poetic, the precision, the power, boom, right then and there. And I think he's giving himself credit for that moment. He's like, look, a fight's a fight and weird things are going to happen. All that matters is that I was in his guard. I opened up with a big elbow that clearly softened him. And here's the thing. I'm okay with the stoppage. I'm going to say it right now. The stoppage I'm okay with. And the reason I'll tell you this is because if you watch the replay again, to be more critical of Herb Dean, even you will then see that Omalley was out again. He got rocked with the elbow, and when the next one came, he went limp again. So
Okay.
messed up leg, went kind of out a little bit from one elbow. The next one was coming down, and he went limp. And you're gonna go, you know what? I've seen enough. This guy's hurt already.
Right.
I'm okay with it. And the only reason poor Herb Dean, man, he does a lot of big events.
Well,
That's also another thing.
we always joked around about that, even back in the day when we would watch fights together. Where like
Herb
whenever
Dean.
Herb Dean was in the octagon, something crazy was gonna happen,
Yeah,
and it
exactly.
hasn't failed.
It hasn't failed. This is something that we've been doing traditionally since we've been watching fights, 10 years ago? Even 10 years ago, we were like, oh, man. Whenever Herb Dean would come out and the fight's about to begin, and you see Herb Dean go, fight, are you ready? Fight, are you ready? You're like, oh, Herb Dean is refereeing this? It's like, pull up a chair, get your popcorn. This is going to be tight. He has this, like, aura that just...
Yeah, and that's why I give him the benefit of the doubt. I have a lot of respect for Herb Dean because at the end of the day, well, number one, he's human. Everyone's going to make mistakes. And number two, he has the experience. Yes, I think... if he was to tell me right now, hey, I saw the leg injury, I knew he was done, I would have believed him. I'd be like, you know what? I feel like as someone who's been in this game for this long, watching fights like that, I would expect someone with your experience to have to notice that. So sure, I'd totally give him the benefit of the doubt. But
So what are you trashing Herb Dean about then? Why'd you say, oh, just because the fact that he just seems to be in this, or?
well, it's been reoccurring so often. I feel like every fight card, Herb Dean's involved with some sort of issue. And if it's it's been opposite, it's been polar opposites. The last issue he had was Dan Hardy. With Dan Hardy got in a lot of trouble with Dana White about.
He did.
Was because he waited too long to stop it, and the guy was apparently taking a bunch of damage. And Dan Hardy just screamed and said, "Yo, stop the fight!" And obviously, as a commentator, you can't get involved like that.
Real quick, time out. I disagree with that one as well. I think that he did well in letting that fight continue. You see, the two examples you're bringing up, which are the most controversial in terms of recent time, I disagree with the majority, at least with I disagree with the mass audience, with the masses. I agree. There we go. I disagree with the masses. And the reason I say that is because we watched that fight again, and the guy got rocked. Okay, he got dropped, but when he hit the ground, he wasn't limp. He had his hand up towards the other fighter that was about to hit him. He was posted up a little bit. He was a little, like, he was aware enough to where it looked like he had some form of intelligent life to defend himself. That to me, I have no problem. I have no problem with Herb Dean going, well, you know, if I stop the fight every time a dude gets dropped, then I'm going to have to stop a lot of fights very early. So let me see what happens. The guy came over him. He threw 1, 2. By the third punch, Herb Dean was stopping it. What's the big deal? Can somebody tell me, like, honestly, he got a lot of crap for that, but can someone tell me what the big deal is? If you got a fighter putting his hand up like this, I would never stop the fight, even if he got rocked and dropped, because then the Frank Edgar fights, you got to stop every one of them. You know what I mean? There's a lot of fights you're going to end up dropping if you do this. So I'm always in favor of, yes, fighter safety, but it's worse to make the mistake in the direction of making a fighter take an extra hit he shouldn't have. Now, if you're a health freak, then of course you're going to shit on what I'm saying. But what I mean is, like, think about it. A bad stoppage affects a fighter's career.
Yeah, and if you're a health freak, I have respect for that. As myself, a neurobiologist, I understand, how important that is. But these guys are not being forced into the sport. They know what they're getting themselves into. So at the end of the day, you chose this life.
It's a fight. It's a fight. So that being said, he's willing to sacrifice some of his health for his career, which is what a fight is. You're going in there to take damage to gain something, right? And what ends up happening here is that now you have a guy who been training for 3-4 months, gets into a fight, trying to make his career build up, and then the referee stops the fight too early because of safety. It's like, dude, I appreciate it, I get it, but man, like, this is 4 months of my life. I don't mind taking an extra punch if I don't have to. I don't mind that. What I mind is that I was okay and you stopped the fight.
Yeah. But I think regardless of everything else, because at the end of the day, it's all going to be based on opinions, and only the fighters and Herb Dean's going to know what actually was happening. It just comes down to the end, which is, number one, Vera's reaction to the win, and his expectations, which is he believes that's it. Like, the Omalley thing is done. He's beaten him. Let's move on. Give me a top 10 guy. Well, hold up a second. I don't think so.
No.
I think you're going to have to fight Omalley right away.
You think a rematch?
They have to. Number one, it's promoting wise, it's gold. I mean, okay. I can already picture the promotions, the promo videos, the build up for another rematch, because like, oh, they're going to show the injury. They're going to show all the shit talking between all that stuff. Now the score is settled. They're both healthy, blah, 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 blah. So promotion wise, it's gold to do a rematch. And two is also just because that wasn't a clear answer. You don't Omalley does not deserve to get hurt on the rankings, and Vera doesn't really deserve the right for like a top 5 guy right off the bat.
So you're saying, okay, no, I'm with you on that. This one I'm gonna have to see eye to eye with you because that's actually a comment that I got from one of my buddies. Hey, you think rematch? And I'm like, well, the reason I say that I don't think we're gonna see a rematch is because at this level in the rankings, maybe you don't see a rematch. It's like, well, but at the same time, with what you're saying, that's starting to look, starting to look a little more reasonable because, yeah, it's like, okay, do you deserve a top 5 for this? No.
You can even play it where, because we would have to see the injury, how much he got injured and his recovery time will be. Because if it's going to be something that's going to be elongated to, let's say, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, then all right, give Vera maybe a top 10 guy, let him climb the ranks. So then the rematch with Omalley will be a guy who's more higher ranked. And again, you're pushing O'Malley's success, which is what the UFC wants because of his stardom. So that can work out too. Maybe the rematch doesn't have to be like right away. Vera's next opponent is Omalley. But the blueprint for the UFC should be, okay, as soon as O'Malley's 100%, he's getting Vera, wherever Vera is in the rankings.
All right. I'm with that. So I'm going to have to say that I'm on team Vera was a sore loser. I do think that the dude should not be looking at a screen going, I told you not to doubt me. It's like, bro, listen, this is not really changing much, man. Like, I hate to tell you, but if the doubters were doubting you before, this is not a performance. Like, okay, when you say to somebody, hey, I told you not to doubt me, it's because you just hit the 3. Like, they went, you can't hit the 3, and somebody hits it. Now, if I shoot the 3 and I miss, but it hits the backboard, goes up, hits a branch, comes back down, and goes in through the hoop, and you go, told you not to doubt me. Those are 2 very different told you not to doubt me. In both, you've made the hoop. In both, you made the shot. Congratulations, you got the W. It's on paper. But let's look at it unfold, and let's see how it really happened. One is a swoosh, and the other one is a little bit of a little ping ball, and then it goes right into the hoop. And then you go, told you not to mess with me. That's where you look at the camera and you go, calculated.
Yeah. And it goes both ways. No one can say Omalley was the better fighter. Hold up. No, we didn't see enough of the fight.
We didn't see enough.
We know, Vera could have had a strategy round 1 and come with a different game plan round 2. Could have been a completely different fight. So it goes both ways. O'Malley didn't show anything, and neither did Vera. It was just, we need a rematch. Both of them has to be healthy. Let's do it again.
Agreed. So let's put in our request here for the UFC to have a rematch. I'm all for it. I just don't know if we're going to see it. I don't know if there's maybe some other fighters start getting built up and Omalley has a better matchup. And one last thing before we go on this segment of the show, which is the Omalley part, because we still got to break down the main event. The part where Omalley now is actually lucky to be in the sport of MMA. And I'll tell you, this is why. In football, a lot of times you have technicalities that make a game end in a way that has to go officially down a certain way, or any sport, really. Let's say there was a rain delay, but there was a team that was already winning, and it was the 9th inning, and they say, screw it, just run that score, and that's it. And it's like, well, we didn't see the whole game. We don't know who would have really won in a 9-inning game. But guess what? That L on record is stuck to you. Like, think about it. Omalley lost, but we're talking, would you put it past the UFC to give Omalley a really well-ranked fighter in the next fight? Probably not, even though he lost. So one thing I love about MMA is that not only is it looked at how you perform in terms of, the L or the W, but it's actually calculating like how that went down, which I absolutely love. Because right now the world, even though they saw Omalley lose, it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah.
And that's what makes Brandon Vera a sore winner. The whole world's going, guys, we didn't see enough. And you have Vera going, told you not to doubt me. And it's like, yes, no, we're still doubting you. This has not changed anything. You made the fluke 3.
If anything, his reaction really shows you what he thinks about himself against Omalley. You know what I'm saying? Like, because the outcome was probably so unexpected for him. Like, he never intended to TKO Omalley that really brought out that reaction of him. Like, he himself was surprised. But I brought up in the last episode, the great thing about this is Omalley, even though he's pretty popular already so early on, he's still really young in his career. This loss, he can get past it and still be the biggest star in the sport a couple years down the road. So if there was ever a time to lose, it was now. That's fine. Get over it. He can still dominate the division.
I will have to say that's exactly how I feel about it. When you're this young and early on, like, he still has a legacy ahead of him. So this is only a small hiccup in the road, and I hope that rematch happens. So Yeah, thank you guys for listening so far. And we're going to move on to the main event now because I think we absolutely need to. But yeah, man.
The trilogy is finally over. We have our answer. What do you think, Danny? Do you think the saga and this chapter has been closed? Do we have a definite better heavyweight in these two fighters?
Miocic did prove himself. He hung in there without the eye poke, which, by the way, was penetration at that point. I saw someone get fingered on live TV. If you will look at this eye poke, it is absolutely disgusting because Miocic has big ass hands. He's a heavyweight. So for the finger knuckle to be just outside of the eyeball when at the moment it happened, yuck, dude. Absolutely gross. DC lost his vision. Epic fail. So, but removing that aside for a second, I think Miocic proved himself absolutely because before it all happened, he had rocked DC. And that's what I'm going to start with. The fact that DC got rocked and he never really got anything else going except for that one little trick, which I broke down in that video, which just dropped earlier, guys, by the way, where DC uses his clinch to try to set up these little hooks and tries to hide the punches behind the wrestling. And it worked. He was catching Miocic. It was working, but I feel that over the course of 5 rounds, as the heavyweight, Miocic just had he had more power. He had the distance advantage of 8 inches or if not more. I forgot what it was exactly, but he definitely had the reach. He had the size. He had the cardio, and he dropped DC. So yes, although the eye poke could have definitely turned the way the fight went, I'm gonna have to say that it was such a close fight that you gotta just go with who you saw win. That's my take, and thanks for giving me my 2 minutes of sanity.
Yeah, no, I think I gave the fight to Cormier in our last episode where we called the fights, but the way it turned out was also what I had expected, which is number one, endurance was a factor. And I think Stipe throughout. Okay, so first and foremost, when you're talking about a heavyweight bout, especially the 2 best heavyweights we have seen in the recent history, it's never gonna be one-sided. It's no way. You're gonna get both guys getting hit hard. Both guys got rocked at some point, and you're just gonna have blow by blow, back to back. So it's never gonna be completely one-sided. But Stipe was definitely the better fighter throughout. You had DC who's coming in with this supposedly wrestling game plan, was going to take him down, was going to do all this stuff. He was successful maybe once, and even then, Stipe completely shut down his wrestling game. Stipe completely dominated the clinch game. The boxing was all Stipe. Yes, DC always has that dangerous right that he overhooks and catches you out of nowhere. So he did get tagged. His jab was also on point. Kept tagging Stipe with it. But Stipe brought the angle. Stipe kept going for the body. Even when DC said, I adjusted to those body shots, no, he kept getting caught with the body shots. So I think the eye poke, it could have factored later on in the fight, but by that point in the fight, DC was a lot slower, was already tired. Stipe's pace looked the same throughout, which is super impressive for a heavyweight. But I called that. I mean, you can just see it, dude. He was lean. He looked like a light heavyweight. So it doesn't surprise me. DC only gets bigger with every fight. I mean, at his age and his career, I'm pretty sure his camps are never as intense as the past. Obviously, fighters are always going to talk shit and say, I feel the best I've ever felt, blah, blah. There's no way. DC only gets bigger with every fight. His camps are probably not as intense. And he's also recovering from a back injury. And I know it was like a year and a half ago, but you're never 100% from those things. There's always in the back of your head. And, again, they'll lie and say, yeah, I feel amazing. No, bullshit.
Yeah.
So the outcome doesn't surprise me. I just thought DC was going to use more wrestling, and that's why he would win based on points. But Stipe shut him down, which is incredibly impressive. And even DC admitted to it. He says he got the underhook game locked down, and I couldn't do anything about it.
On our episode of Fight On, which is, by the way, another podcast that we used to do before we started this brand channel, you said it brilliantly. Like, how would this fight play out? I mean, it's the Apex. It's the smallest ring that the UFC has. People watching, I don't think they know that the octagon is not always the same size, depending on the venue and where they do it and et cetera, et cetera. Maybe the matchups take some influential factors into how they decide this, but the octagon's not always the same size, guys. Depending on what they're doing, they have the larger and they have the smaller, and maybe they have one in between. But I do know this, the Apex by dimension is the smallest octagon in the UFC. So months back, when you and I first started talking about this matchup, when it was first announced, that was the first thing you brought up, and I thought it was super interesting. Is the smaller octagon going to favor DC? Because the single leg will be there a lot easier. It's Miocic has less space to run. Once the takedown engage happens, the cage is right behind you, so you're already, fighting a clinch battle on the cage versus DC, which is on paper a disadvantage to most fighters. And Miocic said, okay, cool. Give me all those disadvantageous factors. I'm going to show the world that I have what it takes. And like you said, he adjusted perfectly. I've got no complaints about Miocic. I think he proved himself as the greatest heavyweight, which is why this, we were hyping DC because as fans, you take a stance as a fan. We took the DC train stance. At least I did. And after this fight, because of how much we took the DC stance, we realized, man, and Miocic still beat him. Yikes. That is a legend. Miocic, I think, solidified himself as a legend. And I think DC goes out a legend, right? Exiting with a trilogy of these proportions is still legendary. But again, legend with a win is always better than going out with a legend with a loss.
Of course. And again, I always bring this up, and I always say, you're gonna have two personalities when you're a fan of MMA. You're gonna have the fan perspective, and you're gonna have the true way things should be perspective in terms of the fighting game. And that's what we had with this fight, where DC's retiring. He is a legend. Yeah, it would have been cool for him to go out with a win, sure, and that would have been nice too. But I remember I was watching the fight with my brother. I just kept saying, if we're talking about what's best for the sport and this division, Stipe is the one that has to win. Because whenever a champion vacates the belt, the next champion always going to have an asterisk on it. Because you didn't beat the champion, you got the belt because the champion left.
Yep.
But now with Stipe winning, Ngannou definitely has to get the next title shot. That feels better because that's how it should be. Ngannou, the best in the division right now, up under the champion, is going up against the true champion who was not beaten. So, in terms of the sport, that's what should have happened. So, I am heartbroken for DC, and it seems like this is the way he's going to go. It was really interesting. I don't know if you saw the Joe Rogan interview right after. The way he answered the question of it was interesting. He somewhat did say, yeah, this is it. But his reasoning was because I don't see a championship anytime soon, and that's the only reason I'll fight. Does that mean...
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
Right. So does that mean you would consider it if like another league offers you a heavyweight championship? Or if like, God forbid, because I would hate that for the division, there's an injury in one of the champions and we got a super fight in our hands? Also, going back to my Twitter rant about what was that's the thing about this card. The behind the scenes on Twitter was insane. Guys, if anyone was watching what John Jones was tweeting.
Oh, I didn't.
Okay. He wasn't on Twitter all night. The moment this fight was about to start, it was just him tweeting. And he just kept saying, heavyweight championship, I'll see you soon. He kept talking about Stipe's right and how I gotta avoid that.
Oh,
that's what I'm saying. The behind the scenes while this card was going on was crazy. So now we have a huge speculation around what's John Jones going to do. Is he going to come up? And if he does, and DC feels comfortable, that sounds like a good introduction fight to the heavyweight.
Which one?
I mean, DC and Jones
at heavyweight.
Well, I mean, I know in terms of money, yeah, the Jones going straight for the championship would sell. But that's not fair, man. I've always hated that. I know Jones is a legend, but you're going to a new division. You got to at least give him 2 fights to at least show his worth in that division, not just go straight for the champion. That'd be really messed up, I think. And again, I don't think the fight should be with DC. All I'm saying is because the way DC answered that question, and if the paycheck is right, your chance to get revenge on Jones, like all these pieces fall into place, and he's feeling good. Would he say no?
I mean,
he didn't say he retired.
Yeah, he did. He said that's it for me.
No, he said it seems that's it for me because I don't see a championship anytime soon. So he said it seems like that's going to be it for me. That was. I mean, again, and I mean, my brother also made this point where he was like, I feel like that's just the feeling after a loss, and after a night's sleep, you wake up the next day with a whole different perspective, and that can also be it. Like today, he might wake up and be like, "Yeah, no, that's it. Like, I'm good." He was just bummed out about the loss, and you probably have that energy. Was like, "Man, you know what? I'm not gonna go out like this. I'm gonna come back." And like, but then you wake up the next day, like, "Yeah, I'm good."
I mean, a quick little side note here, and I made this joke yesterday. Such a big day, and I don't know. Do people reflect on these fighters' lives? Just real quick side note. It's really distracting, but just they don't reflect on these fighters' lives. Like when DC wakes up that morning, He's about to fight the final fight of his UFC career, his legacy, his legend, everything about him. And I can't. How do you live that day? Like, how do you wake up that morning when you have this fight coming up at 10 o'clock at night? It's of epic proportions. The world is watching, millions of viewers. This is the last fight of your career. You're giving it all you've got. How do you not think about anything except the fight? How do you sit at your breakfast table and tell somebody like, "Hey, can you pass me the cereal?"
And I noticed that. I really made a mental note while I was watching the walkout, both Stipe's and Daniel's, and I was like, man, DC looks nervous. And I think it's just because he knew this was it. Even something as simple as when they were putting the Vaseline on him, I was like, bro, I'm pretty sure all he's going through his mind right now is, this is the last time I'm going to do this. And then you see Stipe walk out like, another day at the office. Okay. But DC just looked, he was pacing on the fence. Never really see him do that much. He never made eye contact with Steve. He was looking down the entire time they were doing the intros. I just thought the nerves got to him. And nerves, not as in fear for fighting, but just knowing that, like, this is it. And it just, all that pressure was building up in that moment.
Agreed. And I felt that too. And everybody in this household was like, yeah, it's something about DC tonight. Doesn't seem like he's got it in him. And that's just the reality of it. Sometimes, it is a mental game. Sometimes just having one thing in your head is enough of a hurdle to kind of slow you down. But moving on to the important question, the decision, did you agree with it? Because it was a very close fight. And when it ended, a lot of people were posting like, hey, who wins this fight? The score was not clear. So give me your takes on the decision. Do you think it was real? Some people even gave 49-46 Miocic. What are your takes on that?
No, I was very proud with myself because it was exactly what I called. And in fact, after the fourth round, I had put on Twitter right away, 3-1 Stipe. And like right after I tweeted that, all the big name, respectable people, Okamoto from ESPN, Ariel Helwani, and a bunch of other MMA fighters were all 2-2, 2-2, 2-2. And that was the scorecard. He won 4-1.
I had it 2-2 as well. I had it 2 rounds apiece. But again, the first round, it was a coin flip. The first round was very close. If you're trying to score the fight as you watch it, that first round was very hard to score. You could have made the argument for either fighter. So if you gave DC round 1, then you're going into round 5, 2-2. If not, you're going into round 5, 3-1, which means that I think Miocic won the last round as well. I mean, that's a safe assumption to make. I don't think DC had any gas. Obviously, the messed up eye was a big factor for rounds 4 and 5. But realistically speaking, it did look like DC was slowing down. Miocic had the fourth and fifth round, if not at least the fifth. Either way, it could have been a 4-1 fight. 4 rounds to DC.
I can totally see the argument for the 2-2 after a fourth round. Like, I would not have been angry with that. But there's something about, there are rules to this sport, right? When talking about scoring, we don't have scoring as in like, oh, leg kick, 2 points, right hook, 3 points. That's not how scoring works in MMA. But there are established rules of what a judge should be looking for. And I stick to those rules because I would like to assume that's what judges are also going by. So whenever I see close rounds, first comes obviously significant damage. Then comes things like maybe submission attempts, ground control, all that stuff. And then would come what they call octagon control and pace of a fight.
Aggression.
Right. So when you have a really close round, that's what I fall back on. I'm like, who was the one that controlled the pace of that fight? And in every striking match, no matter what sport, no matter who's fighting, there's always, you can even refer to dancing. There's always the lead person and the follower. Never 2 guys control the pace. It's always one person. And you can clearly see who that is, even on an even fight, because it's always the person who's causing the reaction, not doing the reacting. And DC was reacting the whole entire time. He didn't lead the fight. It was DC in the center of the octagon. It was, and again, it was Stipe in the center. And again, DC had his shots for sure and kept catching with a bunch of these hooks over that DC, for some reason, Stipe didn't adjust to. But
yeah, good point.
When it came down to it, Stipe just looked like he dominated, he controlled that pace. DC was the one trying to keep up with him.
Agreed.
So in a close round, I give it to that person every time.
I have to agree with you. I think Miocic was the one. He was the one dictating the fight, and the decision feels right because DC got rocked real bad. I mean, there was a moment there where I think the bell even saved him. It looked like you let that round go. You let that round go another 30 seconds. It might have ended the fight. I don't think DC could have kept taking those punches from Miocic. So it felt good to see Miocic get the decision because it felt right. And although we were rooting for DC, it's just a good decision like that. I think it was a good one, and it feels nice to finally see it because You know, like your criticism. I don't know. Herb Dean is enough as it is. Getting a lot of criticism there. Now imagine if Herb Dean referees a bad fight that then comes into a bad decision. It's like a mess. You know. So I'm happy that we're getting more clarity in our decisions and that they got this one right. Yeah, man, this has been an amazing thing to talk about. Not necessarily an amazing outcome because Cormier losing vision of his eye is some savagery. I mean, that has to be talked about. I mean, that eye poke was. I mean, eye pokes are bad already, but you're talking about a heavyweight eye poke that came from a strike. It wasn't like Miocic was just like, oh, I bumped you with my hand. No, he was throwing a strike with his hand open, so it has a lot of force. It's a heavyweight, and it entered almost all the way to the knuckle. You're talking about this much distance.
Yeah.
Into
it's
the
a shame,
eyeball.
you know, it's hard for those things not to happen and you not take into consideration. Yeah, I definitely could have affected the fight for sure. And I don't know if you're aware, so it's fine. The news they come out. He does have a cut cornea, so it's incredibly painful. He's gonna wear an eye patch for a long time. As of now, no surgery is required, but doctors did say that they just have to monitor it, see how it heals before they can even know if it is gonna need surgery. But yeah, you're talking about potential eye loss stuff. Like, yeah, if it doesn't heal and there's surgery, you could lose an eye. You could just ask Bisping. So
let me ask you this: how bad is Bisping's eye?
Well, he has a glass eye. He's lost his eye.
Really?
Yeah, he's had his glass eye for years.
He
won a championship
right?
with a glass eye. Yeah,
so
he's like taking it out.
Really? So he's oh god, I did not.
Yeah.
I mean, I knew he had something with his eye, but I didn't know it was glass eye.
Yeah, it was just like years of fighting only made it worse and worse, and he just ends up like losing it. But so the eye thing is obviously you hate to see it always, not only for the safety of the fight, but just because it does add a variable to the fight. But again, if you were to ask me, way before that eye thing happened, Stipe was the better fighter through and through. And I know it sucks to lose. You're never, no matter what I tell DC, he's never gonna be like, you know what, oh, you're right, I'm proud of this fight. No, he's always gonna, because champions hate to lose, and that he's a champion. But DC should not be disappointed. You did put up a great fight. It was not one-sided. Stipe wasn't dominating you. You did just as much damage. There was times where I was surprised Stipe didn't get rocked or knocked down. And you lost again to the best heavyweight, a guy who's on the top of his game right now. I know it sucks to lose, but right now, if I go in a jiu-jitsu bout and I lose against the top 3 guy in the country, and I put up a fight, I'll be really freaking proud of myself.
Yeah, but I guess his mentality is, I'm a lot closer to the best in the world than the average Joe. So like me being that close and knowing that I have the skill set, and the truth is, DC is high level. So for him to lose that is going to hurt way more, even if he did put up a fight, because it's kind of like he's that much closer to being the champ. So, and
also you can tell from the post-fight interview, it seemed like it was mostly like the haunting from Jones saga. It was because when he was asked about it, he said it just sucks to be in the losing end of 2 trilogies.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think a lot of it was that where like it's not so much I lost, but damn, I just can't seem to come on top in these things.
Did he have a trilogy against who else?
I wouldn't say a trilogy, but he had the whole Jones saga.
Yeah. I remember that.
But that was the example he used where like, out of these 2 big rivals that I've had in my career that really were the only 2 guys who really ever give me a hard time, I got the short end of the stick every time. Yeah,
I agree with that. He did. And let's not even get into what Jones put DC through and with all the fight cancellations and the illegal substances and, oh God, the banned substances, I should say. But yeah, man. So guys, if you're still watching, I really appreciate all this time that you've given us. Let us know what you think about the DC Cormier fight. Did the judges get it right? Did you enjoy watching UFC fingering? I'll answer all these questions as bizarrely as they are below. You already know the name Raul, as it gets. Can't go wrong. I'm Danny Miami. Once again, the subscribe button is there. Ring the bell. Stay up to date with our videos. Made for fighting, guys. Welcome to our channel. Hope you enjoy the vodcast and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
All right. Till next time.
Hit us with the 1-2 and we're out of here. Bye.